everybody, it's Lyn from Lyn's Crafts. I get asked questions all the time about what kind of ink I use when I'm embossing on polymer clay. And I use Versamark. You can use any type of ink as far as I know. Some of them dry faster, some of them dry slower. I wouldn't suggest using black ink on white clay unless that's the look you're going for. That's why I use the Versamark, because it is clear. You can get some of the Versamark colors that are tinted slightly that will let you see where you've stamped. And you're going to need a heat gun. Don't ask me. I don't even know what brand it is anymore. I want to say it's a Doris, but I'm not sure about that. A hairdryer won't work. It doesn't get hot enough. A heat gun gets about 300 degrees. That's why you got to keep it moving all the time to keep from burning your clay. That being said, I'm just going to show you a few techniques for using not only your heat gun, but embossing on polymer clay. That being said, as you know, I don't usually do a tutorial that I don't do a finished product. So what I've got to start with is some Premo in ultramarine blue. Try to spit that out. And then some silver. And as you can see, I've got a lot more silver than I do blue. I'm just wanting to tint the silver a color. So I'm going to set my tripod up and I'll be right back. Alright, I've mixed the blue and the silver together, and yes, it still looks pretty silver, but this is just to give you an idea of the difference in the color. It's got a kind of a blue sheen to it. And what I'm going to do is I've cut out a butterfly wing shape. Just whatever shape suits your fancy. So I've rolled this out on my thickest setting on my pasta machine, which on my pasta machine is a 1. On my old pasta machine it was a 9. How confusing is that? But my old pasta machine was an Atlas. This new one is a and of course it says it on the wrong direction. It's a poly roller. And I'm just going to cut this wing out. Doesn't have to be perfect. But cut all the way through would help. Alright. That wonky bit off. Alright. One wing. Now I'm going to flip it over and find a spot where there's room and cut out the other side. And if you'll just stick your template down, it'll stick to the clay. Doesn't necessarily mean you can cut straight. Keep your blade pretty straight up and down. Straight up and down as in this way, not an in or an out cut. Alright. And save your template. I've got a whole stack of them over here. Okay. Alright, now I've got them stuck to my mirror tile. I am going to try to get some non-reflective tiles to do these tutorials with. But what you're going to want to do is to smooth out your edges. And just round them down just a little bit. You don't want the cut edges to be so prevalent. Alright. Then I'm going to take my ball tool, and here's where you've got a lot of playing room. You can rubber stamp on your wing halves. You can freehand on your wing halves. You can do a lot of things. What I'm going to do is just freehand without the gold. Alright. And I'm just leaving a little gap. Alright, just like that. Now, a butterfly's wing will have a lot of different details in it. You know what I'm saying? It'll have veins, etc. So we're gonna do a little bit of that. Let's see. And it's just up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Alright, just a few lines. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make some spirals. I chose silver hoping that you'd be able to see the detail. I might have could have chosen a better color. It's so hard to decide because black, of course, is notoriously hard to see on video. I didn't want to do it white because I didn't want a white butterfly. something just like that. And I'm just going to keep doing those until I fill in all the spaces. Alright. Okay. Now, I'm going to bake this just like this. And that will be the start of our butterfly pendant. Alright, I'm going to bake it and I'll be back. Okay, these are out of the oven now and they're cool. And I've rolled out the rest of that I mixed up. It could just be plain silver, it doesn't have to be the mix. And I'm going to lay these out. If I can figure out how. There we go. Where they cover the back mostly. A little bit of finagling. Alright. Like that. And then I'm going to cut out around them. Alright. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit for the head. Now, of course, you could make the body first and then do the back. But since I mixed my clay, I'm working with a limited amount of clay. And the same thing down here. I'm going to leave some room for the body. It doesn't have to be much. It's just something to give your pendant some strength. So you're not just depending on where the wings stick into the body. I would have been much happier if I wouldn't have cut that bit right there, but we'll make it work. Alright. Then I'm going to gather together what I got left. I know this seems a strange way to do this, but I could have made the body section and then covered the back and baked them in two separate bakings. But I'm trying to shorten the process a little bit. Alright, now I've rolled out a tapered snake for the body. Obviously, it's too long. And I'm just going to lay it up there and get an idea of how long I want it. And then I'm going to turn my blade around the right way so I don't cut myself. Alright. Now we're going to round this end out just a little bit. So my butterfly doesn't have a flat head. Alright. And I'm going to take my knitting needle. And over here where I can see, I'm going to make an indent all the way around. Right there where his head would be. Alright, so you're getting the idea. Alright, and then you can do the same thing all the way down. Like he's got a little segmented body. And as they go down, make them a little closer together. Alright. Now we're going to actually attach him to the wings. And give it just a little bit of firm pressure. It's okay if you mash the detail out. Alright. Now, I'm going to take a stamp. And I've got my favorite flourish stamp right here, which is a Stampin' Up design. And I'm just going to use the edges. I'll show you that. Just the edges. Alright, and I'm going to go down the other side and do the same thing. Alright, now you can see his body is got a lot of detail on it. We covered up the indentions just a little bit, but you can go back and put those back in if you want. Okay, and then up here at his head, I'm going to divide this section into two with just a little bit of detail. Alright, you could put hash marks if you wanted. Just something to represent his eyes. Alright, and if you want him to have antenna, just take a couple of head pins. Alright. And the secret to making head pins that don't pull back out is to give them a little hook on the end. Just something as simple as that. Now, we're not going to use this whole head pin, so alright, just that little J hook there. Alright, I decided to cut the other end off. So my little butterflies will have little J's on the other end, so to speak. Alright, I'm going to pull this backing back. Alright, it's hard to see. Alright, now he's got some little antennae. Now I made them short so that hopefully they won't catch on anything. And after it's baked, you can curl them down some more. Alright. Now if you want your butterfly to have a little shape, you can sure enough bend it where it has some shape before it goes in the oven. Alright. And then just have your little piece of cardstock to bake it on. That will help the bend stay in the piece. Alright, and then we're going to bake this again, and then I'll be back. And as usual, I fibbed because I actually want to put a jump ring down here. So again, I'm going to release the back just a little bit. And get a jump ring. And another question I get asked all the time is what size my jump rings are. I purchased my jump rings like this off of eBay, and they range in size from about tiny to about 10 millimeter. Alright, so I'm using the ones that are about the 8 millimeter. I just use whatever size I feel is appropriate. And then I look for where the jump ring is separated. And as you'll see, it's not connected straight. In other words, it's off center, off kilter. That's what I'm going to stick in the clay. That'll give a little bit of resistance to it trying to pull back out. Alright, now I'm going to bake it for real. Alright, once again. Alright, and I'll stick it in the oven just like that. Ooh, and see, I'm fibbing again. You can do it like this and then drill your holes to hang it by afterwards, or you can do the same thing and put jump rings in right now. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, and again, because the front side of the wings is already baked, I'm going to put just a little bit of bacon bond. There. Now, really and truly this time, it's going to go in the oven just like that. And I'll be back. Okay, here it is out of the oven, and here's where the fun part starts. You can also use embossing pen. A wow embossing pen, a Versamark makes their own version. But what I'm going to do is very lightly, and you can see how cruddy my pad looks, because I don't want to fill in any of the details. Alright, on the wings is just to barely rub my Versamark pad over some of that detail. Alright, I'm working rather quickly. I should have already had my color out. I'm going to use some of this Stampendous. Let's see, what's this one called? Aged Teal, which is a kind of a teal and a bronze mixed together. And I'm just going to do it on my folded piece of paper so that I can pour it back in my bottle when I'm done. can see, it's not perfect, it's not completely covered, and if there's any spots that you aren't... Alright. If you have any places where you don't want the embossing powder, just take you a fine-tipped paintbrush and carefully work them out. Now this is a little heavier grained embossing powder. That I chose, but it'll be alright for this type of work. And since we're going for that kind of rustic look, wow, I've got a shaky hand today. Alright. Okay, and as you can see here towards the body, we didn't get much embossing powder. So there's where I'm going to take my pen and just fill in a little bit. Now you'll find that the embossing pen has a little bit different characteristics than the embossing pad. I find that it dries quicker, which is not necessarily something I care for, but what can you do about it? Alright. Alright, now we're ready to emboss it. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to allow my heat gun to heat up before I put it over the clay piece. That keeps you from having to hold your heat gun over the clay and take the risk of burning it. Alright, so now I've got it good and hot. Don't get too close to the clay, and just keep it moving. Now you'll be able to see the gold flakes melt almost immediately. It's harder to tell with the teal color. Alright, but you can see when it turns shiny, then it's embossed. A little bit more around the tip of the ring. There we go. Alright, now we'll flip it around and do the other side. Again, don't get too close, you'll just blow your embossing powder off. which is definitely not what you want. Now let's see. Yeah. There's what we want. I really like that. That's my first time using that particular embossing powder. I just got those. Alright. Now you could go on and do a different color down the center. Or you could do like I'm probably going to do and use some Inka Gold on the center. Alright. Alright. Just another tip. I have a cup hook screwed to the underside of my desk that I hang my heat gun from. And I just hang it from the stand. I just leave it folded up all the time and it just hangs from there. That way I don't have to worry about setting it down hot, touching it with my elbow, anything like that. Another thing I get lots of questions about is the Inka Gold. It is a wax-based, I believe, acrylic paint that you can use on lots of different things. A lot like the Gilder's paste, but I believe the Gilder's paste is solvent based, just like the Treasure Gold. So the Inka Gold is a little safer to work with on the polymer clay. Alright. Alright. Just a little gold down the body. Now I could have chose a different color. I could have used a blue. I could have used a silver. But I kind of like the way the silver shows through the gold on the detail there. And I'm just going to give that a few seconds to dry. And then I'm going to buff it. And I say this quite often. I've just got a cloth napkin that I use to buff with. And as you can see, it gives a nice sheen. Alright, the next thing that we're going to use the heat gun for is to add some of these Hot Fix rhinestones. I just bought these off of eBay and there was 1,440 and they were relatively cheap. 1,440 of each size. Alright, so I'm going to pick a few colors and then I'll be back. I don't trust the Hot Fix adhesive for a permanent fix, so I will be using a little bit of heat Bacon Bond underneath them. Alright. Alright, and I wanted to quickly show you how there is a vast variety of differences in the colors that are in these rhinestones. And again, you can, I'm sure, buy them separated, but these were cheap and I don't mind picking through them. Some of them have Aurora Borealis finish. These are a darker teal, a lighter teal, a sapphire blue, sky blue, and there's even more. There's a kind of a periwinkle blue. So lots of variety. I love the ones that are a marcasite kind of finish, a gunmetal-y gray color. There's black ones, red, a dark red, several greens, and one of them has a really pretty Aurora Borealis finish on it. They just go on and on. So pick you out some ones you like. Alright, and then we're just going to decide where we want them. I pulled out the Aurora Borealis ones to go on the body. Yeah, I think I like those. Alright, so set yourself out a plan of attack of where you might want them. And I would just do one or two at a time, depending on their lay on the roundness, if that makes any sense. Alright, because once I start the heat gun, for a second or two they're going to want to blow. They're going to want to move around. Again, I want to heat my heat gun up off to the side and get my fingers well out of the way. And keeping my heat gun moving. Now, if I would have left any of that heat and bond squished out, you would have seen it turn clear. Alright, and then with just your ball tool or heat end of a paintbrush or whatever, your fingernail in my case, you just want to give it a good push to make sure that it's seated down into that hot bacon bond. Alright, and I'm going to go on. Now I intentionally put just a little too much so that you'll be able to see it. Well, there you go. You can see it's already starting to turn clear where that heat bacon bond was squishing out underneath. Alright, and then I would just continue on like that and finish putting the rhinestones wherever you decide you want them. I've gotten some of the larger ones out because I think that makes a nice look to have larger and smaller ones. if I can get it to stay there, which I can't. And after the first few, it won't take you very long to get the feel of when they're set. Alright. Okay. And I'm just going to continue on, and I'll put the teal colored ones on the wings. And I've actually got a couple of larger, there just happen to be some larger ones stuck in the bigger bag, and I'll put those on for the eyes. Alright, and I'll come back and show you that when I'm done. One thing I did want to point out, if I wouldn't have been adding the embossing powder and the Inka Gold, which I could have done that afterwards, I could have put the rhinestones in the raw clay and mashed them in just a little bit, and then I wouldn't have had to go back with the bacon bond and add them afterwards. So you can also do that. But since I was adding the embossing powder, I wanted to add them afterwards. Alright. Alright, here it is so far. Now, the one thing you need to know is when you are heating it with the heat gun, you'll need to support it and be kind of gentle, because the clay will soften up a bit when it's reheated. Alright. Really pretty. Now, I could put some stones on the end of the antenna, or on the eyes. That's up to you. And I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do. So I shall decide, and I will be back. Let's see what I think about this. It's cute. Alright. But these little rhinestones are not, they're not the best. And I'm not sure how they wound up in there, but they're just not formed perfectly. And if I use them for the eyes, you probably won't see that little extra bit there that's mismolded. But I'm afraid if I use them on the antenna that you probably would. Alright. Alright, so here it is, all finished. I've got a little glitter embossing powder on the bottom of the pearl. And I've hung it from some beads. Alright. So, there's what you can do. There's loads of other things you can do with your heat gun. From putting thin layers of clay on and on a finished piece and baking it that way, heat setting liquid Sculpey. I've got a tutorial on that. So, lots and lots of ideas for using your heat gun with polymer clay. Alright, holler at y'all later. Bye now.